If you want to know how much your wife really loves you, try hugging her in front of her friends when she's had 3 martinis and thinks she's untouchable. I'm Caleb Monroe, 39 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years building Monroe packaging from nothing into a solid regional business. We handle everything from custom boxes for local bakeries to industrial shipping containers for manufacturers. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well and keeps 43 people employed in our mid-sized Midwest city. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My wife Nina is 35, beautiful in that polished way that comes from expensive salons and designer clothes. She runs her own event planning business, coordinating weddings, corporate parties, and charity galas for the city's social elite. We met at a Chamber of Commerce mixer 12 years ago, got married after a whirlwind courtship, and settled into what I thought was a comfortable life together. That was before last Friday night at Meridian, the trendy downtown bar where Nina likes to hold court with her circle of friends. The place screams money, exposed brick walls, Edison bulb chandeliers, and cocktails that cost more than my employees make in an hour. But Nina insists it's important for her business to be seen at the right places with the right people. I was nursing a bourbon, listening to her friend Ava drone on about her latest Botox appointment, when I noticed Nina seemed unusually tense. She kept checking her phone and shooting glances toward the bar's VIP section where Graham Leeds was holding court, with his usual crowd of real estate developers and city council members. Graham Leeds, 44 years old, inherited wealth, married to old money, and the kind of guy who wears $1,000 suits to casual Friday. He owns half the commercial real estate downtown and has the kind of political connections that make zoning problems disappear overnight. Nina has done several events for his company over the past year, and she always gets a little too animated when discussing their business relationship. "Caleb, you're being antisocial," Nina said, her voice carrying that edge it gets when she's had too much to drink. "Come meet some people who might actually be useful to your little packaging business." Little packaging business? Right. The company that pays for her BMW, her designer wardrobe, and the mortgage on our 4-bedroom house in Riverside Heights. I stood up and moved behind her chair, intending to give her a casual hug before making the rounds. It's something I'd done hundreds of times before, a simple gesture of affection between husband and wife. But the moment my arms touched her shoulders, Nina exploded. She shoved me away with both hands, hard enough that I stumbled backward into an empty chair. The conversation at our table faded instantly. Then, in a voice loud enough to carry across half the bar, she said, "Don't touch me, Caleb. You disgust me. I'm only with you for the money and stability. Everyone knows it." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel every eye in our section turned toward us. Ava's mouth hung open. Sienna, Nina's other constant companion, looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. At the bar, Graham Leeds had turned around and was watching with obvious amusement. For a moment, I just stood there, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. 15 years of marriage, and this is what it came down to. A public humiliation in front of people who were supposed to be our friends. But then something clicked into place. A cold, calculating calm that I hadn't felt since my early days building the business, when every decision could make or break everything I'd worked for. I straightened my jacket, looked directly at Nina, and said in a voice that carried just as clearly as hers had, "Well, that's honest. I appreciate honesty, Nina, and I won't bother you anymore." Then I turned and walked out of Meridian without looking back, ignoring the whispers that followed in my wake. The drive home gave me 20 minutes to think. 20 minutes to process what had just happened and decide what came next. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my mind was made up. Nina wanted honesty. She was about to get more than she bargained for. I went straight to my home office and fired up the laptop. First stop, our bank's website. We had 3 joint accounts: checking, savings, and a money market account that I'd been funding for years while Nina contributed sporadically at best. With a few clicks, I transferred everything into accounts that only had my name on them. Next, I called our credit card companies. The cards were in my name, with Nina as an authorized user. I explained that I needed to remove the authorized user immediately due to a security concern. The customer service representatives were helpful and efficient. Then I pulled up the vendor contracts for Nina's business. Over the years, I'd helped her establish relationships with caterers, florists, photographers, and venue managers. Many of them also did business with Monroe Packaging, and several had personal guarantees that I'd co-signed back when Nina was getting started. I spent the next 2 hours drafting emails and making phone calls, nothing illegal, nothing unethical, just exercising my rights under contracts I'd signed and agreements I'd guaranteed. By 3 a.m, I'd sent notice to 17 different vendors that I was withdrawing my personal guarantees and terminating any agreements that included my company's backing. The last thing I did was check my phone. 14 missed calls from Nina and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. Caleb, where did you go? People are asking questions. Come back. This is embarrassing. We need to talk. Answer your damn phone. I was drunk. You know I didn't mean it. I turned off the phone and went to bed. Saturday morning, I was up at 6 as usual. Coffee, newspaper, and a review of the emails that had started flooding in overnight. Nina's vendors were confused and concerned. Several wanted to schedule meetings to discuss the changes. 2 had already canceled upcoming events, unwilling to proceed without my company's backing. Nina stumbled downstairs around 10, still in last night's dress, makeup smeared, looking like she'd slept in her car, which I realized she probably had, since her key card to the parking garage was linked to the credit card I'd canceled. Caleb, we need to talk, she said, trying to sound authoritative despite her disheveled appearance. Good morning, Nina. Coffee's in the kitchen. Don't play games with me. What did you do to our accounts? I looked up from my newspaper. I followed your advice about honesty. You said you're only with me for money and stability, so I removed the money from the equation. Now we can see what's left. Her face went pale. You can't just freeze our accounts. That's my money, too. Actually, it's not. Check the signature cards at the bank. I've been the sole contributor to those accounts for the past 3 years. Your event planning business has been operating at a loss, remember? We discussed it during tax season. Nina grabbed her purse and started digging for her phone. This is insane. You're being vindictive. I'm being practical. You made your feelings clear in front of our friends. I'm simply adjusting our financial arrangements to match your stated preferences. She tried calling the bank, then our credit card companies, growing more agitated with each conversation. The customer service representatives were polite but firm. I had every legal right to make the changes I'd made. The vendors are calling, she said, scrolling through her missed calls. Marcello's Catering wants to meet Monday morning. Riverside Flowers is asking about payment guarantees for the Henderson wedding. That's your business, Nina. Handle it however you think best. You know I can't handle it without your backing. The business model depends on your guarantees. I folded my newspaper and looked at her directly. Then maybe you should have thought about that before announcing to a room full of people that you find me disgusting. The next few hours were educational. Nina made call after call, trying to salvage her upcoming events. Without my financial backing, several vendors demanded payment up front. Others simply canceled their services, unwilling to risk working with someone whose financial situation had suddenly become uncertain. By Sunday evening, Nina had lost 3 major events and was scrambling to find replacements for vendors who'd backed out. Her phone rang constantly. Angry clients, confused suppliers, and concerned friends who'd heard about Friday night's scene at Meridian. Ava called, Nina said, slumping into the kitchen chair across from me. She says people are talking. Graham Leeds is telling everyone that you had some kind of breakdown at the bar. Is that what Graham is saying? He thinks you're having a midlife crisis, acting out because you're jealous of successful people. I nodded thoughtfully. And what do you think, Nina? I think you're being childish. One stupid comment after too many drinks, and you're ready to destroy everything we've built together? Everything we've built together. I repeated the phrase slowly. Tell me, what exactly have we built together? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I built a business that supports both of us, while you built a social life that revolves around spending my money and complaining about my existence. Nina's eyes flashed. That's not fair. My business contributes to our household. Your business lost $12,000 last year. I have the tax returns to prove it. It's an investment. Building a client base takes time. 5 years, Nina. You've been building a client base for 5 years, while I've been paying the bills. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her coffee cup. Fine. You want to play hardball? 2 can play that game? I'm not playing anything. I'm just being honest, like you were on Friday night. Nina stormed out, and I heard her car start in the driveway. She didn't come home that night. Monday morning brought a call from Derek Hoffman, my college roommate and one of the few people I still considered a real friend. Derek had become a private investigator after leaving the police force, and he had a talent for finding information that people preferred to keep hidden. Saw the show at Meridian Friday night, he said without preamble. Word is you finally grew a spine. News travels fast. In this town, Nina's meltdown is the hottest gossip since the mayor's son got arrested for tax evasion, but that's not why I'm calling. What's up? You might want to know that your wife spent Saturday night at Graham Leeds' downtown condo. His wife is in Europe visiting family, and Nina's BMW was in his parking garage from about midnight until 7 this morning. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You're sure? I've got photos if you want them. time-stamped, GPS-tagged, the works. Send them to my personal email. Caleb, I know this is rough, but you need to be smart about this. Don't do anything that could come back to bite you legally. I'm always smart about legal issues, Derek. That's why I've stayed in business for 15 years. The photos arrived an hour later. Nina's BMW in Graham's parking garage, clear as day. Her walking into his building at 12:17 a.m. Her leaving at 7:23 a.m., wearing the same clothes from the day before. I forwarded the photos to my attorney with a brief note. Please add these to my file. We may need them soon. Tuesday afternoon, Nina finally came home. She'd changed clothes and fixed her makeup, but she couldn't hide the guilt in her eyes. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Now let's be adults and figure out how to fix this mess. What mess would that be? The accounts, the vendors, the gossip. People are starting to ask questions about our marriage. And what are you telling them? Nina sat down across from me, trying to look composed. I'm telling them we had a disagreement, but we're working it out. Are we working it out? That depends on you. If you restore the accounts and call off this financial tantrum, we can go back to normal. Normal? I leaned back in my chair. You mean the normal where you spend my money, insult me in public, and sleep with Graham Leeds? The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? Saturday night, Graham's condo, should I be more specific? Nina's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You're having me followed? I don't need to have you followed. You're not as discreet as you think you are. It's not what you think. Really? Then explain to me what it is. Graham is helping me with my business. We were discussing strategies for dealing with the vendor situation. Until 7 in the morning? It's complicated. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of Derek's photos. This complicated? Nina stared at the image, her face cycling through shock, anger, and finally resignation. How long have you known? Does it matter? It matters to me. I've suspected for months. I've had proof since Saturday. She slumped in her chair. Caleb, I never meant for this to happen. Which part? The affair or getting caught? The affair. It just developed over time. Graham understands my ambitions. He appreciates what I'm trying to build. With my money. It's not about money. Really? Then why did you tell a room full of people that you're only with me for financial security? Nina was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because it's true. The honesty was almost refreshing. Almost. Well, I said, at least we're finally being honest with each other. What happens now? Now you make a choice. You can end the affair, commit to working on our marriage, and rebuild your business without my financial backing. Or you can continue your relationship with Graham and we'll proceed with a divorce. Those are my only options? Those are your only options. Nina stood up and walked to the window, staring out at our manicured lawn. And if I choose Graham? Then you'll discover what life is like without my money and stability. You'd really divorce me over this? Nina, you publicly humiliated me. You're sleeping with another man, and you just admitted that you're only married to me for financial reasons. What exactly am I fighting to save? She turned around, and I saw tears in her eyes. We had good times, Caleb. It wasn't all bad. No, it wasn't, but it wasn't enough either. Graham says he'll leave his wife for me. Graham says a lot of things. How much of it do you think is true? He loves me. Graham Leeds loves Graham Leeds. Everything else is negotiable. Nina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You really think I'm that stupid? I think you're that desperate to believe you're special. The slap came fast, but I saw it coming and caught her wrist before her hand reached my face. Don't, I said quietly. You've humiliated me enough. She jerked her hand free and stepped back. I hate you. No, you don't. You hate that I'm not playing the role you assigned me anymore. What role is that? The grateful husband who pays the bills and stays quiet while you live your fantasy life. Nina grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I'm going to stay with Ava for a few days. Good idea. Give us both some time to think. She paused at the door. Caleb? Yeah? I really am sorry about Friday night. That was cruel, even for me. Yes, it was. After she left, I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my home office thinking about the next steps. Nina had made her choice, even if she wasn't ready to admit it yet. Now I needed to make mine. I called Derek. How did it go? He asked. About as well as expected. She's choosing Graham. I'm sorry, man. Don't be. Better to know the truth than live a lie. What do you need from me? Everything you can find on Graham Leeds: financial records, business dealings, personal habits. If he's got skeletons, I want to know where they're buried. That's going to take some time. I've got time. Nina's going to drag this out as long as possible, trying to have it both ways. And when she realizes she can't, then we'll see how much Graham's promises are really worth. Derek delivered his report on Graham Leeds the following Monday. We met at a diner on the east side of town, far from the trendy spots where Nina and her crowd like to congregate. Your boy Graham is interesting, Derek said, sliding a thick folder across the table. On the surface, he looks clean. Successful business, active in charity work, married to the right kind of woman. But dig a little deeper, and things get complicated. How complicated? He's leveraged to the hilt. All that real estate he owns, most of it's mortgaged at 90% loan to value. His cash flow is tight, and he's been shuffling money between properties to avoid margin calls. I flipped through the financial documents Derek had compiled. How did you get all this? I've got friends in the banking industry. Plus, most of Graham's deals involve city contracts, which means public records. What else? He's not as happily married as he pretends. Margot Leeds has been seeing a divorce attorney for the past 6 months. She's just waiting for the right moment to file. And Nina doesn't know any of this? Nina sees what Graham wants her to see. Expensive suits, fancy cars, penthouse condo. She doesn't see the credit card statements or the mortgage payments. I studied a photograph of Graham's downtown building. What about the condo? Leased, not owned, and he's 3 months behind on the payments. So when his wife divorces him, he's going to lose everything. Margot's family money is what's been keeping him afloat. I closed the folder and looked at Derek. How long do I have? Before what? Before Nina figures out she's bet on the wrong horse. Derek shrugged. Could be months, could be years. Graham's good at keeping up appearances. But eventually the math stops working. I need it to stop working sooner. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time for some of Graham's creditors to get nervous about their investments. Derek raised an eyebrow. That's playing with fire, Caleb. Graham started this fire when he decided to sleep with my wife. I'm just going to make sure it burns hot enough for everyone to see. Over the next 2 weeks, I made some phone calls. Nothing illegal, nothing unethical, just conversations with people who had a right to know about potential risks to their investments. I started with Tom Morrison, who ran the bank that held mortgages on 3 of Graham's properties. Tom and I had done business for years, and Monroe Packaging had never missed a payment. Tom, I wanted to give you a heads up about something, I said during our lunch meeting. I'm going through a divorce, and my wife is involved with Graham Leeds. I thought you should know there might be some complications with his financial situation. Tom frowned. What kind of complications? Well, she's been using my business connections to help Graham secure deals. Now that we're separating, those connections are going away. I figured you'd want to take a closer look at his portfolio before things get messy. I appreciate the heads up, Caleb. We'll review his accounts. Similar conversations with other creditors and business partners followed. I never lied, never made false accusations. I just made sure people knew that the business relationships Graham had been counting on were about to change. The effects were swift and predictable. Banks started calling in loans. Business partners began asking uncomfortable questions about cash flow and collateral. Within a month, Graham's carefully constructed financial house of cards was wobbling. Nina, meanwhile, was living in her own fantasy world. She'd moved in with Ava temporarily, but spent most of her time at Graham's condo. Her event planning business was in free fall. Without my financial backing, she'd lost most of her major clients and couldn't secure new ones. But she seemed to think Graham was going to solve all her problems. He's talking about starting a new company, she told me during one of our brief phone conversations about divorce logistics. Something in luxury event planning for high-end real estate clients. That sounds ambitious. Graham has big plans, Caleb. Bigger than anything you ever dreamed of. I'm sure he does. You could learn something from him about vision and ambition. I'll keep that in mind. What Nina didn't know was that Graham's big plans were mostly desperate attempts to generate quick cash. Derek's surveillance had revealed meetings with increasingly questionable business partners, including at least 2 guys with connections to organized crime. He's getting sloppy, Derek reported. Panic makes people stupid. How stupid? Stupid enough to start cutting corners on safety regulations for his construction projects. Stupid enough to make promises he can't keep to investors. Stupid enough to think your wife is going to stick around when the money runs out. When do you think that'll be? Soon. Margot Leeds filed for divorce yesterday. Graham doesn't know yet. The papers haven't been served, but when they are, his world is going to collapse overnight. I felt a grim satisfaction. Make sure you're watching when it happens. I want to see his face. The papers were served on a Thursday afternoon while Graham was having lunch at the country club with potential investors. Derek had positioned himself at the bar with a clear view of Graham's table. It was beautiful, Derek told me later. The process server walked right up to him in front of 6 guys he was trying to impress. Graham tried to play it cool, but you could see the panic in his eyes when he read the divorce petition. What did he do? Excused himself to make a phone call, probably trying to reach his attorney, but here's the kicker. Margot had already moved the money. Every joint account, every investment portfolio, every asset she could legally touch. Graham walked into the bank after lunch and found out he was broke. And Nina? Still clueless. She was at the spa when it happened. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The call came at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. Nina, sobbing hysterically, barely coherent. Caleb, I need help. Something's wrong with Graham. His wife, she took everything. He's talking crazy, saying things that don't make sense. Slow down, Nina. Where are you? At his condo. But there are men here. Angry men. They're saying Graham owes them money. They're threatening him. I could hear shouting in the background, Graham's voice rising in panic. Nina, get out of there. Right now. I can't just leave him. Yes, you can. Whatever Graham's gotten himself into, you don't want to be part of it. But I love him. Nina, listen to me carefully. Graham is about to lose everything. His wife divorced him, his business is failing, and from the sound of things, he owes money to people who don't accept late payments. Get out of there before you get hurt. The line went quiet, except for the muffled sounds of argument in the background. Nina, are you there? He told me we were going to be together. He said he'd take care of everything. Graham told you what you wanted to hear. Now you're seeing who he really is. This is your fault, she screamed suddenly. You ruined everything. You turned people against him. I didn't turn anyone against Graham. I just stopped protecting him. What does that mean? It means I stopped using my business relationships to help him secure deals. It means I stopped co-signing loans and providing references. It means Graham had to survive on his own merits, and it turns out those weren't enough. You destroyed him deliberately. I removed my support from a man who was sleeping with my wife. If that destroyed him, maybe he wasn't as strong as you thought. The shouting in the background was getting louder. I heard what sounded like furniture being overturned. Nina, you need to leave. Now. Where am I supposed to go? Anywhere but there. The line went silent. I tried calling back, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I considered calling the police, but what would I tell them? My estranged wife was at her lover's apartment during a business dispute. Instead, I called Derek. I need you to do a drive-by on Graham's building. Nina's there, and it sounds like things are getting ugly. On my way. Derek called back 20 minutes later. Police are already here. Looks like someone called in a domestic disturbance. I can see Nina in the lobby talking to officers. Is she hurt? Doesn't look like it, but she's pretty shaken up. What about Graham? They're bringing him down now, hands cuffed behind his back. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and concern. Satisfaction that Graham was finally facing consequences for his actions. Concern that Nina had been caught in the crossfire. My phone rang again. Nina's number. Caleb. I'm here. Are you okay? Can you come get me? The police said I can go, but my car keys are upstairs and they won't let me back up there. Where are you? In the lobby of Graham's building. There are reporters outside. Reporters. Of course. Graham's arrest would be big news in our city. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The scene outside Graham's building was chaos. Police cars, news vans, and curious onlookers crowded the street. I found Nina sitting on a bench in the lobby, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd seen her in years. What happened? I asked. Graham owed money to some investors. They came to collect, and when he couldn't pay, things got violent. He started screaming at them, threatening them. Then someone called the police. Are you hurt? No, but I was scared, really scared. I helped her to her feet. Come on, let's get you out of here. As we walked toward my car, a reporter spotted us. Mrs. Monroe, can you comment on your relationship with Graham Leeds? Nina buried her face against my shoulder. Just get me out of here, please. I put my arm around her and guided her through the crowd. No comment. The drive home was silent except for Nina's occasional sniffles. When we pulled into our driveway, she finally spoke. I've been such a fool. Yeah, you have. You're not going to make this easy for me, are you? Nina, you humiliated me in public, had an affair, and told me you were only married to me for money. Why would I make anything easy for you? She was quiet for a moment. What happens now? Now you decide what you want to do with your life. Graham's going to be dealing with legal problems for a long time. His business is finished, his marriage is over, and from what I saw tonight, he's got bigger problems than just divorce lawyers. And us? There is no us. You made that clear months ago. But I'm here. I called you when I needed help. You called me because you had nowhere else to go. That's not the same thing as wanting to be married to me. Nina started crying again. I don't know what I want anymore. Then figure it out, but figure it out somewhere else. You're kicking me out? I'm telling you to make a choice. You can't have both lives, Nina. You can't keep Graham as your exciting lover and me as your financial security blanket. Graham's finished. You said so yourself. So now you want to come back to me because your first choice didn't work out? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I got out of the car and started walking toward the house. Nina followed. Caleb, wait. Can't we at least talk about this? I stopped at the front door and turned around. We did talk about it, at Meridian, in front of all your friends. You told me exactly how you felt. I was drunk. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. And you know what? I'm glad you said it, because now I know the truth. What truth? The truth is that you never loved me. You loved what I could provide for you, and when someone better came along, you were ready to trade up. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you asking for a divorce before you started sleeping with Graham. Fair would have been you being honest about your feelings instead of stringing me along while you explored your options. Nina wiped her eyes. So what now? You just throw away 15 years of marriage? You threw it away, Nina. I'm just cleaning up the mess. I opened the front door and stepped inside. Nina followed me into the foyer. I don't have anywhere to go, she said quietly. You can stay with Ava, or Sienna, or any of the other friends who thought it was entertaining when you humiliated me in public. They don't want me around anymore. They think I'm bad luck. Then I guess you're learning what it feels like to be alone. Please, Caleb. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. No, we can't, because I don't want to fix it. You don't mean that. I looked at her standing in the foyer of the house I'd bought, wearing clothes I'd paid for, asking me to forgive her for betraying everything we'd supposedly built together. Nina, for the first time in our marriage, I'm being completely honest with you. I don't love you anymore. I don't trust you. I don't want to be married to you. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to make you feel better about your choices. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll pack some things. Take whatever you want. I'll have my attorney draw up a property settlement. What about my business? What business? You lost most of your clients, remember? I could rebuild it. With what money? Your sugar daddy is in jail, and I'm not bankrolling your ventures anymore. Nina's face hardened. You really are a bastard, aren't you? I'm a man who got tired of being taken for granted. She went upstairs to pack. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my home office, thinking about the future for the first time in months. Tomorrow, I'd call my attorney and start divorce proceedings. I'd rebuild my social life around people who actually valued my company. And I'd run my business without worrying about supporting someone who saw me as nothing more than a meal ticket. Nina came downstairs an hour later with 2 suitcases and a box of personal items. I'll send for the rest later, she said. Fine. She paused at the door. Caleb? What? I really am sorry for all of it. I know you are, Nina, but sorry doesn't fix this. After she left, I sat in the quiet house and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. For the first time since that night at Meridian, I wasn't angry or hurt or plotting revenge. I was just free. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Saw the news about Graham's arrest. You okay? I typed back, better than okay, it's over. The divorce? All of it. Nina, Graham, the whole mess. Time to move on. Good for you, man. Want to grab dinner tomorrow? Celebrate your freedom? I smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. I finished my bourbon and went upstairs to bed. Tomorrow would be the first day of my new life, a life where I didn't have to pretend to be happy with someone who saw me as disgusting but convenient. Nina had wanted honesty. Well, she'd gotten it, and so had I.